Hello, family. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also, share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The Martins estate buzzed with excitement. With just a week to the grand wedding of Melody Martins and Gabriel Cole, every hallway echoed with the sound of preparations. From the florists confirming color palettes to event managers inspecting crystal chandeliers, the family spared no expense. Melody, elegant and graceful in her silk robe, sat in front of her vanity, smiling as Ariana adjusted her curls. "You're glowing, Mel," Ariana said softly, watching her reflection in the mirror. Melody chuckled lightly. "That's what love does, right?" Her tone was light, but something in her eyes hesitated. She brushed it off. Across the estate, Gabriel strolled in confidently, greeting the staff like royalty. Everyone admired how attentive he was, always pulling Melody's chair or opening her car door. To outsiders, they were perfect, charming, in sync, and deeply in love. But behind the sparkle, a storm quietly brewed. That evening, Gabriel stood with Melody on the balcony, the orange hues of sunset washing over the estate. "You know, I still can't believe I get to marry you," he said, gently placing a kiss on her hand. "You've changed my world." Melody smiled, though her fingers slightly tensed in his grip. "Just promise me one thing, Gabriel," she said quietly, gazing at him with hopeful eyes. "That you'll always be honest with me, no matter what." Gabriel's smile didn't waver. "Always," he lied. Inwardly, his thoughts raced, not about love, but power. Becoming Melody's husband meant becoming part of the Martins' empire. And once the wedding was done, he was set to take over as CEO, just as her father intended. He played the role of the devoted fiancé flawlessly, but his loyalty belonged elsewhere, to himself and to the woman who had been by his side long before Melody, Bella. Yet tonight, he played his cards right. He held Melody's waist and whispered sweet nothings as cameras flashed behind them. "To forever," he toasted. Melody clinked glasses with him, nodding slowly. "To forever," she echoed. But even as she smiled, her heart thudded with a strange unease she couldn't yet name. Vincent Adeyemi stood in the far corner of the Martins' lounge, arms folded, eyes narrowed. He wasn't one to meddle without reason, but something about Gabriel Cole never sat right with him. For weeks he had watched how Gabriel operated, too polished, too perfect, always performing for the room. Vincent leaned against the grand piano as Melody walked in, her silk blouse slightly wrinkled from a long day. "You look tired," he said casually, trying not to sound intrusive. Melody gave a tired smile. "Wedding things. Stressful but exciting." Vincent hesitated, then said, "You trust him, don't you?" She raised her brows. "Gabriel?" He nodded. "Yes, Vincent, I do. You've asked me this before." Vincent's expression didn't change. "I know, but something's off. I don't think he's with you for the right reasons." Melody sighed and picked up a glass of water. "You've always been overprotective. This is no different." Later that evening, Vincent watched from his study window as Gabriel's car pulled up. There was a moment where Gabriel paused in the driver's seat before stepping out, adjusting his cufflinks with a self-satisfied smirk. Vincent narrowed his eyes. "What are you hiding?" he muttered under his breath. In the hallway, Gabriel greeted the staff warmly, laughing with one of the butlers. Melody came down the stairs, and Gabriel immediately turned on the charm, twirling her lightly by the hand. "I missed you today," he whispered. "Every second." But Vincent noticed how quickly his expression turned neutral when Melody looked away. As they passed, Vincent murmured low enough for only Gabriel to hear, "Some masks crack eventually." Gabriel's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he walked Melody into the dining room, draping an arm around her waist. Vincent stayed behind, watching them go. He didn't have proof, not yet, but instincts this strong rarely lied, and he had a feeling Melody was going to need protection more than celebration. Bella West leaned against the plush headboard of the downtown apartment they once shared, her phone in hand and a glass of wine untouched on the nightstand. "So that's it? You're really marrying her?" she asked, her voice void of emotion but her eyes sharp. Gabriel, shirt unbuttoned halfway and pacing the room, rubbed his temples. "Bella, I told you, this is temporary. A step. Once the papers are signed, everything changes. Bella scoffed. Don't insult me. You've been saying that since last year. Gabriel stopped walking. This is different. Melody's family is handing over Martin's group to us. To me. You think I'm doing this for love? Bella threw the pillow at him. Exactly. That's the problem. You're using her, Gabriel. And the more you lie, the more disgusting this gets. He caught the pillow midair, his patience running thin. You knew what this was. You knew the goal. Don't play hurt now. Bella stood, walking slowly toward him. I didn't think you'd actually go through with marrying her. Do you know what it feels like to be your secret while you play perfect fiancé in public? Her voice cracked despite her attempts to stay calm. Gabriel avoided her eyes. You knew the risks. I told you from the beginning we had to be smart. Melody's father is ready to name me successor. If I play this right, we own everything. Bella stepped closer. And where does that leave me? Gabriel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he whispered, just wait until after the wedding. I'll make things right. Bella's laugh was bitter. That's what men say when they plan to do nothing. She grabbed her coat, brushing past him. I won't be hidden anymore, Gabriel. You either end this after the wedding, or I will. Loudly. Gabriel stood in silence, watching her walk out the door. For the first time, a ripple of fear crept through him. Bella had always been loyal. But something in her eyes tonight told him she was done waiting, and that made her dangerous. The next afternoon, Melody and Ariana walked through the rose garden behind the Martins' estate. The scent of blossoms danced in the air, and the golden sun bathed everything in calm. But Ariana's eyes were troubled. Mel, she said carefully, I know you trust Gabriel, but have you ever stopped to wonder what he'd be without your name? Melody, gently plucking a lavender bloom, looked up. Why are you saying this now? Ariana hesitated, then continued. Because I once dated a man like him. All smiles and flattery, he disappeared the moment I lost my job. Melody turned to face her. You think Gabriel's with me for status? Ariana looked pained. I'm saying you should ask yourself if he'd love you if your father weren't Martin's. The silence between them stretched as Melody considered her words. Gabriel's not like that, she finally said, but even to her own ears, her voice lacked conviction. That night, Melody sat alone in her room, scrolling through old photos on her phone. Gabriel's face smiled back at her in every frame, but something Ariana said lingered. Would he love you without your name? Melody tapped on a video from their trip to Ghana last year. In it, Gabriel glanced nervously off camera as she laughed freely with locals, her face glowing with ease. He had seemed disconnected. As she replayed it, her door creaked open. You okay? Ariana asked, peeking in. Melody nodded but didn't put her phone down. I've loved him for 3 years, Ari. Didn't think I'd doubt it now. Ariana entered slowly and sat beside her. Sometimes love isn't enough. You need trust. And truth. And if you're searching for those days before the wedding, something's not sitting right. Melody leaned her head on her friend's shoulder, eyes wet. I just want to believe I'm not making a mistake. Ariana held her tightly. Then find out now before it becomes permanent. Melody sat across from Gabriel in his office at Martin's group, her fingers curled around a chilled glass of water as he slid a folder across the table. It's just standard procedure, he said smoothly, his voice calm. My lawyers insisted. A prenup protects both of us. Melody opened the folder and scanned the document, her brows narrowing with every paragraph. The language was layered, technical, yet oddly specific. Gabriel leaned back in his chair. It only secures what we individually owned before marriage. Nothing more. Melody flipped to the 4th page. Why does this clause say that any assets acquired during the marriage, regardless of contribution, are subject to your approval before sale or transfer? Gabriel blinked, caught off guard. Oh, that it's a formality. We can revise that if it makes you uncomfortable. Melody closed the folder quietly. You had this drawn up weeks ago. You never told me. He smiled awkwardly. I didn't think we'd need to talk legalities so close to the wedding. Later that day, Melody took the document to Vincent. He read in silence, his expression tightening with each page. He's giving himself control, he finally said, placing the file on his lap. This clause about executive influence over inherited holdings. It's not just a prenup. It's a blueprint for takeover. Melody's face fell. You think he wants the company. Vincent didn't flinch. I think he wants more than you. Her voice cracked. And if I'm wrong? If this is just fear talking? Vincent softened. Then you revise the agreement and see how he reacts. A man with nothing to hide doesn't fight transparency. Melody nodded slowly, the weight of uncertainty settling heavier in her chest. That evening, she sent the document back to Gabriel, annotated, highlighted, and signed only with the words, "Please revise before I do." The silence that followed his receipt of the note spoke louder than any answer she expected. Bella stood by the glass window of her apartment, arms folded as she watched the city lights flicker beneath her. Gabriel had come late again, suit wrinkled, eyes tired. She didn't move when he entered. "You're getting married in 3 days," she said flatly. "And I'm still here like a secret you're ashamed of." Gabriel closed the door and sighed. "Bella, we've been through this. You know I can't just blow it all up right now." She turned slowly. "Then blow it up the night before. Come to me. One last time, or I swear I'll do it for you." His brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" Bella walked up to him, slipping a flash drive into his palm. A copy of every message, every photo, time-stamped. "I've kept them all, Gabriel. Don't forget who helped you climb." His fingers closed tightly around the drive. "You wouldn't," she smiled coldly. "Try me." Gabriel returned to his car, jaw clenched as he sat in the driver's seat, heart pounding. He had always counted on Bella's loyalty. She had been with him before he met Melody, when all he had was ambition and dreams. But now she was unraveling, and if she exposed their history, everything he worked for could crumble. He stared at the wedding invitation on the passenger seat, Melody's face beaming next to his. The weight of the decision pressed against his chest. Loyalty to the woman who helped him rise, or the woman who held the keys to the empire he coveted. He pulled out his phone and texted Bella 3 words. "One last time." Almost instantly, she replied, "Room's ready. Don't be late." That night, Gabriel checked into the hotel under a false name. As he walked through the lobby, he didn't realize that someone had followed him in, watching every step with a camera phone, finger hovering just above the record button. The Martins' estate glittered with elegance that Friday night. Golden chandeliers shimmered above the long dining table, which seated only immediate family and close relatives for a final intimate gathering before the wedding. Melody entered the room in a deep emerald gown, her face composed, her steps graceful, but her heart heavy with questions. Across the table, her father raised a toast. "To the union of 2 powerful spirits," he said proudly. Gabriel reached for Melody's hand and smiled, his thumb grazing her knuckles. She looked at him quietly and whispered, "Do you still want this, Gabriel?" He blinked. "Of course I do." "Why would you ask that?" She offered a faint smile. "No reason." Under the table, her hand loosened from his grip just slightly, and he didn't seem to notice. After dessert, Melody stepped away from the gathering, requesting a moment in her father's study. Alone, she placed the marriage contract on his desk and signed it. Her pen moved with calm determination. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I won't be caged," before folding the document neatly and sealing it in an envelope. Outside the study, Vincent waited silently. "Are you ready?" he asked. Melody nodded. "Yes, more than ever." As she walked past Gabriel again to return to the party, she smiled politely but didn't stop. Gabriel watched her go, sensing something was off, but not enough to worry. He was too distracted by the thought of the hotel room waiting for him later that night, completely unaware that the most important door had already begun to close. Night had quietly descended over the Martins' estate, and most of the guests had retired to their suites. Melody stood by her bedroom window, watching the moonlight stretch across the garden path. She clutched her phone tightly, her heart thudding against her ribs as a message popped up. "Car is ready." No questions asked. Jude. Slipping on a long coat over her nightdress, she tiptoed out of her room, each step deliberate, rehearsed. At the back gate, Jude waited patiently, dressed in plain clothing rather than his usual uniform. "Thank you," she whispered as she entered the car. He nodded once, no words exchanged. The drive was long but peaceful. Melody rested her head against the glass, her thoughts a swirl of heartbreak and resolution. She didn't cry, not yet. This wasn't an escape. It was a decision. She had made up her mind long before Gabrielle ever stepped into Bella's hotel room. Vincent, meanwhile, stood by the family library, phone in hand, watching a short video sent anonymously to him. It was a blurry clip of Gabrielle checking into a hotel, time-stamped from less than an hour ago. He didn't need clearer proof. What mattered more was that Melody had already made her move. He sent her a brief message, "Stay focused. I'll take care of things here." Melody's reply came swiftly, no turning back. At the safe house Jude had arranged, one of the Martins' countryside lodges far from the city, Melody sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames. "Do you think he'll even notice I'm gone?" she asked softly. Jude, after placing her luggage near the guest room, turned to her. "Men like him only notice when it costs them something." She looked up at him, eyes misted with quiet pain. "Then I hope it costs him everything." Gabriel stood before the mirror in the hotel suite, adjusting the collar of his shirt as Bella emerged from the bathroom in a silk robe. "You've looked better," she said, smirking. "Wedding jitters?" He forced a laugh. "Just making sure tomorrow goes smoothly." Bella raised an eyebrow. "It's sweet, you pretending to care." He poured himself a drink and sat on the edge of the bed. "This is the last time, Bella. After tomorrow, I have to distance myself for optics." She laughed bitterly. "So I'm a blemish on your fairy tale now?" Gabriel didn't respond. Instead, he sipped slowly, eyes avoiding hers. The room was warm, but coldness lingered between them. While they talked, Bella sneakily took a photo of Gabriel from the reflection in the mirror, him seated, drink in hand, the hotel room clearly visible behind him. She uploaded it to her close friend's story, thinking no harm would come of it. "Just needed a little insurance," she muttered. Gabriel, half drunk, didn't notice. Hours later, he passed out beside her, unaware that the damage had already begun. Elsewhere, Vincent reviewed the digital footprint from Bella's post. Though it had been deleted minutes later, someone had already screen-recorded it. "Foolish," he whispered, forwarding the clip to Ariana. At the safe house, Melody didn't sleep. She sat by the window, her eyes on the stars, her heart hollow but free. "Did he think I'd never find out?" she asked aloud. Jude, sitting across the room with a warm cup in hand, met her gaze. "He never thought you'd walk away." Morning broke over the Martins' estate with fanfare. Musicians rehearsed softly, florists arrived with final touches, and photographers set up their equipment for the grand day. Gabriel arrived just after 10 a.m., dressed sharply and trying to appear collected. But the circles under his eyes betrayed him. As he made his way to the bridal suite, he rehearsed what he'd say to Melody. He'd tell her she was beautiful, that today would change their lives. He knocked gently on the door. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. A hint of anxiety surfaced. "Mel," he called, turning the knob. The room was open, empty, spotless. The dress was gone. No shoes, no notes, no staff. Just silence. He rushed out, searching frantically through the halls, stopping maids and coordinators. "Where is Melody Martins?" he barked. She was supposed to be getting ready here. No one had answers. Panic bloomed. He stormed toward the main ballroom, where guests had started arriving. Vincent spotted him from across the foyer and approached slowly. "Looking for someone," he asked coolly. Gabriel grabbed him by the arm. "Where is she?" Vincent shrugged. "You had the whole night." "Maybe you should have asked her then." Gabriel froze. "What do you mean?" Vincent leaned in, his voice sharp. "She left, quietly, without the drama you deserve, and she won't be coming back." For the first time, Gabriel's face lost its composure. The wedding music began to play in the background, but the bride would never walk through that door. The Martins' estate descended into confusion as the minutes ticked by and Melody remained unseen. Guests whispered behind manicured hands, glancing toward the altar, then at the groom pacing nervously near the entrance. Gabriel clutched his phone, calling Melody repeatedly, only to hear it go to voicemail. "She must be delayed," he mumbled to the wedding planner, who stared back with concern. The musicians faltered in their rhythm, unsure whether to continue or stop. A quiet unease swept across the hall. Then Mr. Martins stood and addressed the guests. "We appreciate your patience. Please enjoy the refreshments while we sort out a slight delay." But even his voice lacked conviction. Ariana stood off to the side, arms crossed tightly, her eyes scanning every corner, heart pounding. She knew exactly what was happening, but it wasn't her story to tell. Upstairs, Gabriel slammed the bridal suite door shut and kicked over a decorative vase. "Where is she?" he muttered through clenched teeth, staring out the window as if she might magically appear from the garden below. Bella sent a message, "Is it happening?" But he didn't respond. For the first time, the reality of Melody's silence pressed on him like a vice. The perfection he had calculated was falling apart, and every second without an answer chipped at his carefully constructed image. Vincent stood in the doorway moments later, arms folded, watching Gabriel unravel. "She saw the truth," he said. Gabriel turned, sweat forming above his brow. "You knew." Vincent's voice remained calm. "She made her choice before you could make a fool of her. You should be grateful she left with grace." Gabriel's breath grew shallow. "She's destroying everything." Vincent stepped closer. "No, Gabriel. You did that all by yourself." The hallway outside the estate's grand hall was quiet as Vincent and Gabriel stood face to face. Gabriel, still in his tuxedo, looked more like a ghost than a groom. "You think you're better than me," he spat, fists clenched. Vincent didn't flinch. "No, I think I was right about you all along." Gabriel scoffed. "You never liked me." "I never trusted you," Vincent corrected, reaching into his pocket and pulling out his phone. He played a video, Bella's mirror photo, time-stamped from the night before, Gabriel in full view. "You didn't just gamble with Melody's heart. You gambled with her legacy," Vincent said, pocketing the phone. "And she folded before you could place your final bet." Gabriel's jaw twitched. "She'll come back." "This is a stunt," Vincent laughed coldly. "You really don't understand the kind of woman you lost." Gabriel leaned against the wall, wiping sweat from his neck. "She blindsided me. I didn't think she'd actually leave. She's always been so composed, so forgiving. That's what you counted on, isn't it?" Vincent interrupted. "You mistook her silence for weakness. That was your first mistake." For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Gabriel whispered, "Where is she?" Vincent straightened. "Somewhere you'll never reach, not physically, not emotionally. She's not hiding. She's free." With that, Vincent turned and walked away, leaving Gabriel staring into the space where Melody once stood, his future slipping through his fingers like dry sand. The silence around him wasn't just emptiness anymore. It was the loud echo of everything he took for granted. By evening, the news had already leaked. "Heiress vanishes on wedding day" flashed across multiple gossip blogs, and even reputable outlets scrambled for statements. Gabriel sat alone in the estate's lounge, scrolling through headlines that painted him either a victim or a scorned lover. His PR team dialed in, voices frantic on speaker. "We need a story fast," one said. "This can't look like you were dumped." Another added, "We could spin it as a mutual pause, maybe even blame stress or her health." Gabriel raked his hands through his hair. "And what happens when she surfaces and says otherwise?" Silence followed. Then came the suggestion. "Get ahead of it. Say you both agreed to take time apart. Say it was her idea." Gabriel's expression hardened. "Do it. Just don't mention Bella. Ever." While social media erupted in speculation, Vincent and Ariana quietly handled the Martins' internal affairs. Ariana released a single statement. "The family asks for privacy during this time." No further details, no explanation. Just a wall of silence. Gabriel, meanwhile, struggled to maintain control of the board's confidence. "I can still lead the company," he told Mr. Martins in a strained phone call. "This doesn't change anything." The response was cool. "It changes everything, Gabriel. You were being welcomed in as family. You were going to be trusted with what we've built. And you've managed to turn a celebration into a scandal." The call ended. Gabriel sat in the quiet that followed, trembling, not out of love lost, but power slipping. He had always seen Melody as a door. Now the door had closed, and he wasn't even on the same floor anymore. Ariana stared at her phone as it buzzed on the coffee table. Gabriel's name flashed again, call number 11. Her thumb hovered above the screen before she pressed the power button and let it go dark. She had nothing to say to him. Her loyalty was not divided, and Melody had entrusted her with silence, not protection, but clarity. "People like him will talk until they twist their own lies into truths," Melody had said the night before she vanished. Ariana respected that. Still, the weight of everything nearly crushed her when Melody disappeared without even leaving a handwritten note. Ariana paced her living room, flinching each time her phone lit up. When Gabriel's number finally stopped appearing, she sighed in relief, until she saw the name Bella West. The audacity left her breathless. The message from Bella was short. "You think she's innocent? Ask her who she's with now." Ariana stared at the text, jaw clenched. She considered replying, but she knew better than to engage with someone like Bella, fueled by pettiness and rejection. Instead, she archived the message and grabbed her keys. She drove out of the city, straight to the countryside safe house Vincent had privately shared with her, where Melody had chosen to stay in peace. Inside, Melody sat near a wide window, reading a journal and sipping warm tea. Ariana entered quietly and sat beside her. "He's losing it," she said. Melody didn't look up. "Let him." Ariana turned to her. "Do you want the world to know what really happened?" Melody finally met her gaze. "Not yet. Let them think I was the one who walked away confused. By the time I speak, it won't be a whisper, it'll be an earthquake." Bella stood in front of her vanity, phone in hand, as she prepared to spin her own version of the truth. She had tried to stay quiet, but Gabriel's silence was beginning to feel like abandonment. She posted a photo, a soft focus shot of herself in the hotel mirror, with Gabriel's jacket on the chair behind her. The caption was vague, "Some truths hide in reflections." Almost instantly, her inbox flooded. Screenshots circulated, blog pages refreshed, and threads speculated. Some defended her. Others called her the reason the wedding failed. But all of them agreed on one thing: Gabriel was no victim. Bella smirked at the storm she'd started. "Let's see him lie his way out of this," she said aloud. But her victory was short-lived. Within hours, the Martins family lawyer reached out with a formal notice. "You are hereby instructed to cease and desist any public statements or insinuations involving the Martins' name or assets," the email read. Bella's smirk faded. She scrolled further. Attached was a threat of legal action and defamation consequences. Then came a message from Gabriel himself. "What did you do?" She typed quickly. "You said nothing." "I said something. Fair trade." He responded with, "You just made things worse." Bella slammed her phone down, pacing the room. She had thought exposure would give her leverage, but instead it cut the last fragile thread connecting her to Gabriel's world. At the same moment, Melody sat with Jude by the fire in the safe house. "She took the bait," Melody said quietly, showing Ariana the trending headline. "And now the world will dig for the rest of the story." Jude looked at her, voice low but firm. "When you speak, you end him." Inside the Martins Group executive wing, tension filled the room like smoke. An emergency board meeting had been scheduled without full context. Everyone assumed it had something to do with the media fiasco, but no one expected what was coming. Gabriel entered the glass-walled conference room, suited but sleepless. "I appreciate you all coming on short notice," he began, hoping to steer the tone. The chairman cleared his throat. "We called this meeting, Mr. Cole, not the other way around." Gabriel froze, realizing he was no longer the one leading the room. Another board member passed around printed copies of an internal audit report, flagging inconsistencies Gabriel had previously buried under corporate jargon. The timing couldn't have been worse. Then the lights dimmed, and a screen lit up at the end of the room. It displayed the Martins Group logo for a moment, then shifted to a live video call. Melody's face appeared, poised and radiant, sitting somewhere far away yet commanding every eye in the room. A stunned hush fell over the boardroom. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her tone calm but firm. "I apologize for my absence on what was supposed to be my wedding day. But as you've seen, my silence was never weakness. It was strategy." Gabriel's chest tightened. Melody continued. "In light of recent revelations, and given my stake as primary shareholder, I request this board to reconsider Gabriel Cole's pending leadership role, effective immediately." No one interrupted. No one challenged her. Because in that moment, she was not the missing bride. She was the rightful heir reclaiming her voice. Melody sat upright, framed by the soft wooden panels of the countryside lodge behind her. She wore a crisp white blouse, hair pulled back with precision, and no trace of hesitation in her voice. The live video feed, broadcasted to the Martins boardroom, each frame carrying more gravity than the one before. I trusted Gabriel, she said clearly, but trust should never be currency in a transaction, and I refused to hand the legacy of my family's empire to someone who only ever saw me as a stepping stone. Gabriel sat 2 chairs away from the screen, stunned silent, eyes wide as her every word landed like a verdict. Melody didn't raise her voice, but the calmness in her delivery was devastating. This company was built on integrity. If that is still our shared vision, then you know what decision must be made. The board members murmured quietly among themselves. The chairman finally stood. "Melody," he said, "do you intend to return in full capacity?" She nodded. "As shareholder and strategic partner, I will not allow my personal name to be weaponized against this business again." Gabriel finally found his voice. "You're acting out of emotion," he interjected, his voice thin. "This is revenge." "No," she interrupted calmly. "This is accountability." She locked eyes with the camera. "You gambled everything, Gabriel, including my name. Now live with the consequences." She leaned back in her chair. "My legal counsel will follow up with formal documentation. Until then, I ask the board to suspend Gabriel's advancement effective immediately." With that, she ended the call. The screen faded to black. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. Gabriel looked around. No one met his gaze. As the boardroom emptied, Gabriel remained frozen in his seat, surrounded by the echoes of his own downfall. Every mask he had carefully worn, the charming partner, the visionary leader, the composed groom, had shattered in a single 10-minute call. A few board members offered cold nods as they passed him, their silence louder than any words. Mr. Martins didn't say a thing. He simply turned and walked out. Gabriel finally stood, running a hand through his hair, the sudden weight of failure settling on his shoulders like lead. He left the building not as the soon-to-be CEO, but as a man stripped of every illusion he built. Outside, the sun blazed mercilessly, but he only felt the cold. Back at the lodge, Melody closed her laptop and let out a long, tired breath. Jude stepped in from the hallway, holding a small tray with tea. "You were brilliant," he said softly. She offered a faint smile. "I didn't want it to come to this, but I had no choice." Jude placed the tray on the table and sat across from her. "He thought you'd stay silent forever." Melody met his eyes. "That's what they always think. That quiet means powerless." She reached for the tea. "But the truth, it means I was listening, observing, waiting." Jude leaned in gently. "And now," she took a sip and nodded. "Now, I take back everything they thought they took from me." As the fire crackled nearby, a new confidence settled into her. She was no longer the woman Gabriel could manipulate. She had become the storm that ended his reign. 2 days later, the Martins estate was once again filled with cameras, but this time they were from the press. Melody had agreed to a single interview held at her family's garden pavilion. Reporters buzzed, but she remained serene. The interviewer leaned forward. "One final question, Miss Martins. Are you still engaged to Mr. Cole?" Melody smiled and turned to the man seated beside her, holding her hand gently but firmly, Jude Okafor, the Martins family driver. Gasps filled the room. "No," she said calmly, "I'm not engaged to Mr. Cole. I'm married. To the man who's never once lied to me." Jude lifted her hand and kissed it softly, his presence steady, proud, and deeply respectful. The room was stunned. Cameras flashed. Questions erupted. She raised her hand for silence. "This man has been in my life far longer than the media ever cared to notice. While others chased power, he offered loyalty. While some wrote vows on paper, he kept promises in action." One reporter asked, "Did the board know about your marriage?" Melody turned slightly. "Not until now. I wanted my position in the company to be recognized on merit, not status. But make no mistake, this is my partner in business and in life." Jude added, "I didn't marry an heiress. I married a woman who deserved better." The crowd fell into a reverent silence. Somewhere far away, Gabriel watched the press conference from his apartment, the screen blurring from his own tears. He had underestimated Melody in every way. And now he had to watch her build an empire beside a man he never once thought to fear. Gabriel sat stiffly in the Martins Group conference room for what would be his final time. The atmosphere was formal, but emotionally charged. The board members took their seats one by one, each of them now looking at him differently, not as the chosen successor, but as a liability. Mr. Martins, once a father figure, sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Cole," he began, "after thorough discussion, the board has voted unanimously to revoke your appointment as incoming CEO. Gabriel's chest tightened. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. Mr. Martins remained unmoved. "No, Gabriel. We made a mistake in trusting you." A formal letter was handed to him, termination of all pending agreements, with a clause barring reemployment or consulting for the next 5 years. It was the final nail in the coffin. Gabriel stood, slowly folding the document, trying to preserve some dignity. "Everything I did was for this company," he muttered. One of the board members, Mrs. Obiora, shook her head. "No, everything you did was for yourself." As Gabriel turned to leave, his phone buzzed. It was Bella again. He didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know what to say. She had become a mirror to his failures. Outside the building, reporters tried to swarm him, but security blocked them off. He walked straight to his car, avoiding cameras, not looking back. The empire he'd tried to steal had spit him out entirely. Meanwhile, back at the lodge, Melody stood in front of a wall-sized window with Jude at her side. "It's over," she whispered. Jude placed a hand on her back. "No," he said with calm conviction. "It's just beginning." Within 24 hours, news of Gabriel's dismissal overtook headlines. What had once been mere speculation became confirmed disgrace. Ex-groom ousted after secret affair, read one article. Another showed side-by-side photos of Melody's press conference and Gabriel's exit from Martin's group, one rising, one falling. The public commentary was swift and unforgiving. Former supporters distanced themselves. Partners withdrew from joint ventures. Even Bella released a voice memo denying any long-term relationship, trying to salvage her own image. Gabriel watched it all unfold on a cracked phone screen in his dark apartment. His curtains were drawn, inbox flooded with rejections, and calls from once loyal allies went unanswered. He had become a cautionary tale. He tossed his phone aside and leaned against the wall, staring into nothing. The world he'd built had vanished, but it was the silence that haunted him most, Melody's silence. No threats, no vengeance, no name-calling. Just precision, and the sting of being forgotten. When he turned on the television, a commercial aired featuring a new campaign from Martin's group, announcing their next phase under Melody's leadership. Her face was calm, confident, visionary. The tagline read, "Integrity isn't inherited. It's earned." Gabriel turned off the TV. That one sentence pierced him deeper than any scandal ever could. He realized too late that Melody hadn't just walked away. She had moved forward. And there was no catching up to someone who no longer looked back. Far from the noise of the city, Melody walked through the open fields behind the lodge, her bare feet touching the cool earth. It was the first time in weeks she had felt the simplicity of peace. Jude walked beside her in quiet solidarity, their fingers interlocked, not out of show, but shared strength. "It still feels surreal," she said softly. How quickly everything fell apart and came together. Jude smiled. Sometimes destruction clears the space for what was meant to be built. They stopped beneath an old mango tree, the same one they had often sat under during her childhood. "Do you regret not giving him a second chance?" Jude asked gently. Melody looked up toward the sky. "No, because he never gave me a first one. Just an illusion." Later that evening, Melody sat at the wooden desk overlooking the hills, writing in her journal. She documented not the pain Gabriel caused, but the lessons it brought, the clarity of silence, the importance of choosing oneself, the danger of trusting words over actions. Jude entered the room with a steaming bowl of yam porridge, her favorite, and placed it beside her. "Come," he said, "rest now." She closed the journal and followed him to the small fireplace. They sat in silence, sharing a meal like old friends who had finally found their way back home. There were no vows spoken, no declarations needed. Their love was not a performance. It was quiet, certain, and whole. And in that stillness, Melody realized something. What she lost wasn't nearly as valuable as what she found. Herself. Bella sat in her dimly lit apartment, wine glass untouched, scrolling through the avalanche of posts tagging her name. Where once she wielded scandal like a sword, now it sliced her back. Homewrecker, jealous opportunist. and "the woman who got played" were just a few of the trending comments. She had tried to spin the narrative, but public sympathy had shifted, not to her, not to Gabriel, but to Melody. The media now hailed Melody as the poised bride who reclaimed her story. And Bella, she was the footnote, the enabler, the discarded mistress. She hurled her phone across the room, the crash echoing in the silence. "He promised me everything," she whispered. But all she had now was shame and a spotlight that no longer wanted her. The next morning, Bella confronted Gabriel at his crumbling flat. She banged on the door until he opened it, his face drawn, hair unkempt. "This is your fault," she hissed, storming inside. "You used me, then vanished when things went wrong." Gabriel barely looked at her. "I lost everything too, Bella. You think I wanted this?" She laughed bitterly. "You think that's comfort? I lost what little name I had left because I believed in you. And what did I get? Headlines that will haunt me forever." Gabriel leaned against the wall, his voice hollow. "There's nothing left to salvage. Not me, not you, not this." Bella stared at him, this man who once seemed so powerful, now broken, insignificant. "We could have had everything," she whispered. "But you weren't smart enough to protect it." She left without another word, and this time she didn't look back either. Vincent stood at the wooden gate of the countryside lodge, hands in his pockets, shoulders heavy. It had taken him days to gather the words, but none of them felt right. When Melody finally opened the door, there was no tension in her face, only quiet acknowledgement. "You came," she said simply. "I needed to," he replied, stepping in. They sat in the sunroom, where the light fell gently between them. Vincent cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology, not for doubting Gabriel, but for not trusting how strong you were. I thought protecting you meant controlling your choices. I was wrong." Melody looked down, her fingers trailing the rim of her teacup. "You were trying to shield me, but I had to see it for myself." He continued, voice low. "You handled it better than I ever could. The way you stood before the board, how you kept your dignity intact. You weren't just strong, Mel. You were brilliant." She smiled gently, not with pride, but with peace. "Thank you, Vin. I needed to know someone saw that." Jude stepped in a moment later, nodding politely. Vincent stood and shook his hand. "You looked after her when it mattered most. Thank you for that." Jude simply replied, she never needed rescuing, just someone who wouldn't betray her. The three stood together in rare silence. No bitterness, no tension, just resolution. As Vincent left, Melody followed him to the gate. "You were right to worry about him," she said. "But don't worry about me anymore." Vincent turned and gave a brotherly nod. "You're exactly where you should be." And for the first time, he left feeling like she didn't need protection. She had finally become her own shield. The grand auditorium at Martin's Group buzzed with anticipation. It was the company's quarterly unveiling event, but this time there was no Gabriel at the podium. Instead, all eyes turned as Melody walked out in a tailored navy suit, her shoulders squared, her energy calm but commanding. She didn't start with numbers or projections. She began with values. "This company was built on trust," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "That trust was broken. But from today, we rebuild with purpose, with clarity, and with leadership that reflects integrity." The crowd erupted in applause. Among them were old employees who had once questioned her silence and now stood in awe of her voice. As the presentation ended, Melody invited someone up to the stage. Jude walked confidently to her side, not introduced as a driver, not labeled by his past, but simply as her partner. "Change isn't only about new systems or charts," Melody said. "It's about the people who stand beside you when everything else falls." The audience rose in a standing ovation. Backstage, Ariana hugged her tightly. "You didn't just reclaim the company," she whispered. "You redefined it." Melody smiled through tears. "I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity. And now I have it." Later that night, as she stood alone in the quiet boardroom, looking out over the city lights, she whispered to herself, "This is the legacy I choose to protect." And it had nothing to do with the man who once tried to own it. Gabriel stood in the lobby of a boutique investment firm, nervously smoothing the creases in his cheap suit. He had reached out to nearly a dozen firms in the past 2 weeks. Most didn't respond. Those who did rejected him before he even sat down. But this time he had hope. A former university contact now worked at this firm and had promised him 5 minutes. He was ushered into a glass-walled office where a junior partner sat, flipping through a thin version of his resume. "So you were almost CEO of Martin's Group," the man said, unimpressed. "But your tenure ended before it began." "Scandal, if I recall." Gabriel straightened. "Yes, but I have Insight Contact's ideas. I was integral to strategic transitions during the last quarter." The man leaned back, closing the folder. "Your name has become noise, Gabriel. Clients don't want risk, and right now, your presence is just that." He walked out of the building, humiliated, into the wind and noise of Lagos traffic. He stood at the corner for a long time, not knowing where to go next. Even Bella had stopped replying. No ideas, no plans, no direction. He sat on a bench outside an abandoned bus stop and pulled out his phone. Scrolling through social media, he saw Melody's latest interview clip trending again. Her words echoed in his mind. "We don't fear the past, we learn from it, and we rise." He shut his phone off, eyes watering. Not because he lost the company. Not even because he lost Melody. What crushed him most was realizing he had never actually built anything real, only illusions. In chasing power, he had become disposable. His hands trembled as he buried his face in them. "I thought I was smarter than everyone," he whispered to himself. "But I never saw the woman I was trying to manipulate." He was 10 steps ahead. Melody walked into the rooftop cafe where Gabriel had requested one final meeting. She didn't owe him anything, but closure, she believed, was not always for the weak. It was sometimes the most powerful gift a healed person could offer. He sat at a corner table, looking worn but less arrogant. When he saw her, he stood slowly. "You look good," he said, attempting a smile. "And you look like someone learning how to live without mirrors," she replied gently, taking her seat. He sat across from her, fiddling with his glass of water. "I didn't bring you here to beg," he began. "I just needed to say it, to your face. I messed everything up. You gave me a future, and I saw it as a shortcut." Melody nodded slowly. "You didn't just lose me, Gabriel. You lost access to who you could have been if you had just chosen truth over tactics." There was a pause, then she leaned in slightly. "You had charm, influence, even vision. But you lacked character. And that's why everything you built crumbled." Gabriel's eyes glistened. "Do you hate me?" he asked. Melody gave a small smile. "No. I pity the version of you that thought manipulation was stronger than love. But I don't hate you. That's too much energy." She stood and placed a folded note on the table. "That's a letter I wrote the night before the wedding. You might understand me better now that you know how it ended." He looked at the note, but didn't open it. She walked away, her steps unhurried, her presence leaving the space lighter. Gabriel unfolded the letter only when she was out of sight. The words were clear, measured, and painful in their honesty. And as he read her quiet goodbye from weeks ago, he realized she had already left long before the altar. All he'd done was make her right. At Martin's Group's grand quarterly town hall, the entire company gathered in celebration, not of a new product, but a new era. Melody stood center stage beside the company's oldest staff member, a woman named Auntie Clara, who had worked as an office assistant for over 35 years. "We begin this new chapter not just with innovation, but with intention," Melody declared. "Our future will be shaped not just by profits, but by principles." The room broke into applause, not for her position, but for her presence. She had become more than the heiress. She was now a true leader, respected not because of her last name, but because of her bold, unwavering choices. Jude sat in the front row, watching quietly, pride beaming in his eyes. Later that day, Melody walked through the company's employee break room, not to inspect, but to listen. She chatted with interns, shared jokes with engineers, and made sure everyone felt seen. "Ma'am," a young analyst asked timidly, "how did you stay so composed during everything that happened?" Melody smiled softly, because silence is a seed. It grows powerfully when you water it with wisdom. That quote would later be printed on the office wall. In her private office, she hung 2 new framed photographs, one of her parents when the company first launched, and one of her and Jude sitting in the garden, laughing barefoot. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. One photo represented legacy, the other the love she chose for herself. And as she sat behind the same desk Gabrielle once fought to conquer, she whispered under her breath, "This is how you build something no one can take from you." There was no orchestra, no rows of chairs, no champagne glasses waiting to be filled. Instead, the ceremony was held beneath the large almond tree behind Melody's childhood home, the same one she used to run around barefoot under before boardrooms and betrayals. The sun filtered softly through the branches as Melody stood barefoot on the earth, her white linen gown fluttering gently with the breeze. Jude stood beside her, not in a tuxedo but in a simple navy caftan. Vincent and Ariana were the only witnesses, standing at a respectful distance. The efficient and elderly friend of Melody's late mother read simple vows that echoed through the quiet afternoon. There were no rehearsed speeches, no performance, just truth. As they exchanged rings, Melody looked into Jude's eyes and whispered, "This time I choose love, not leverage." He squeezed her hand, his voice low but certain, "And I vow to protect peace more fiercely than power." When they kissed, it wasn't followed by applause, only birdsong and the distant rustle of leaves. Vincent wiped a discreet tear, and Ariana caught it with a gentle nudge. "We were watching the wrong story," she whispered to him. She wasn't running from a man. She was walking toward herself. After the ceremony, they sat beneath the tree and shared a quiet meal, no cameras, no hashtags. Just loved ones, laughter, and moments too sacred to broadcast. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Melody rested her head on Jude's shoulder. "It's funny," she murmured, "how silence witnessed both my breaking and my becoming." And in that hush, the world felt whole again. Gabriel sat alone at an outdoor cafe on the city's quieter side, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee. His phone buzzed with alerts he no longer opened. He had become an afterthought in a world that once revolved around his ambition. Then, as he scrolled absent-mindedly through social media, he paused. The photo, grainy, untagged, and quietly uploaded, appeared in his feed. Melody, barefoot in the grass, smiling as she leaned into Jude's embrace beneath a tree. No captions, no hashtags. Just a candid moment captured in time. Gabriel zoomed in instinctively, heart clenching. The world hadn't forgotten him. It had simply moved on. And it had taken her with it. He closed his phone and leaned back in the chair, blinking at the setting sun. The weight in his chest wasn't jealousy, it was something colder, more bitter. Regret, not just for losing Melody, but for never truly seeing her. He had chased titles, strategies, and short-lived validation. But she had found something he never understood, quiet love, rooted in truth. A waitress walked by and offered to refill his cup. "No, thank you," he said, standing slowly. "I've had enough." As he walked away, he passed a small newspaper stand. The latest edition's headline read, "The Martins' Legacy, a New Era of Grace and Grit." He didn't buy it. He didn't need to read it. The headline said it all. And for the first time in his life, Gabriel realized the difference between building a future and simply chasing one. Melody hadn't just survived him. She had risen, and he had watched it happen from the very edge of what could have been. Here's the Bible verse. Proverbs 11 verse 3. This verse speaks directly to the heart of the story. Melody's strength wasn't found in loud retaliation, but in her unwavering integrity. Gabriel, on the other hand, built his life on deception and watched it collapse beneath him. Moral of the story: true power is not found in manipulation or status, but in character, patience, and truth. In a world where deception may offer shortcuts, only integrity leads to a future worth keeping. Melody chose dignity over drama, silence over spectacle, and purpose over revenge. In the end, the one who walked away in silence became the voice that redefined legacy, while the one who tried to control everything lost even himself. Let your values outlast your victories, because what's built on truth can never be stolen. That's the end of the story. What did you learn from this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments section. Leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notification so that you'll be notified whenever we drop our next videos. Also, share this video to someone who might be interested. Thank you so much for watching.